a good view, yes. So my name is Crystal, so I'm really happy to be sharing the Blue Manager students final presentation for this symposium week. So I like, of course, to extend also a warm welcome to everyone in the room, our students, also the jury members, but everyone also online, and also maybe joining us also on YouTube. So of course, if you're watching right now, do not hesitate to ask your questions, share comments, interact. I will share them also with the students. So, and it can be also done during the question session. So our first session is entitled Risk and Resilience for Tropical Coasts. Our student will take us on a journey across a tropical region from, I think, Indian Oceans to the Pacific, finally to the Caribbean. And it's also my pleasure, of course, to introduce you to the different jury members we have today. So we have on my left, we have Diana Calvache from Université Côte d'Azur, working at MARRES. We have Jean-Vincent Viengracia, working at the Métropole Nice Côte d'Azur, MPA manager of Nice, and also president of Nature Dive. And we have online also joining us today, we have Martin Kolunogui, which is a biologist and artist and founder of Coral Guardian. So thank you so much. I will also thank, of course, all the reviewers of your manuscripts. There is more people. Behind you have Jean-Vincent, you have Martin, you have also Louise Amand Galano from Université Côte d'Azur de Écosys, from Marta Mitoni, University of Auckland. We have also Elisabeth Cunin, which is also from Université Côte d'Azur, and Guillaume Leport, which is from Blue Seeds. So this afternoon, we're going to hear 4 presentations. We will start with Stéphane, followed by Léonore, and after a short break, we will have Hugo on site, and we will finish with Alban. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to start the first presentation. It's coming on stage. Stéphane, the floor is yours. As you know, there is 15 minutes of presentation and then 15 minutes of questions. Okay, I'm letting you start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So I'm here to talk about my final project that took place in my job environment, where I aimed at linking nature-based vision brought by MARRES program with disaster risk management in my current domain of competence. I integrated the Pirwa Center as deputy director in January 2026. And you will see that my final project will examine how Pirwa can move from a general interest in nature-based solutions towards a more strategic integration of environment, climate, and ecosystems into disaster risk management. So, few words of context. Nature-based solutions are now globally recognized as effective tools for climate adaptation, resilience, and disaster risk reduction by major players such as IPCC, World Bank, UN agencies in general. Climate risks are also in parallel intensifying, and the most exposed settings are precisely coastal and riverine areas where cyclones, storm surges, floods, and erosion are already a reality. More particularly in the Indian Ocean, islands face a particular combination of pressures such as level rise, coral bleaching, biodiversity loss, strong logistics constraints, and limited land and institutional capacity to face disasters. In this context, ecosystems have a key role to play. Reefs, mangroves, forests directly shape how communities are exposed to hazards, how quickly they recover, and how they are resilient. So let's talk a little bit about what is Pirwa Center, my current employer. Pirwa Center is the French Red Cross platform dedicated to disaster risk management in South Indian Ocean. For over 25 years, the Pirwa Center supported 82 interventions across 8 territories in the region. It has built a unique mandate that goes beyond emergency responses, addressing preparation, adaptation, recovery of disaster-prone countries, but combining together operations, expertise, training, innovation, and research across these 8 territories, which are either insular or coastal. What is important to know is that the Pirwa Center is not operating in foreign territories. It supports Red Cross societies to provide assistance in their countries, which is important. So let's look at some data before going on. 46% of Pirwa's interventions since 2000 were triggered by cyclones and 26% by floods. Together, nearly 3/4 of all operations were linked to meteorological hazards and the ocean. So that reality is exactly what makes integration of ecosystems, climate adaptation, and nature-based solutions into Pirwa's work strategically necessary. So within this context, I observed that the region does not lack nature-based solutions initiatives. What is actually missing is a more explicit and operational DR application to disaster risk solutions. Pirwa is missing a coherent strategy, vision, and approach about the topic. And a good illustration of that is that we don't see many solutions dedicated to disaster risk reduction. So based on that, to define my project, I established few key questions. Can nature-based solutions become intentional disaster risk management interventions? Under which institutional conditions? And how should Pirwa position itself within this frame? So my objective with this project will be to lead Pirwa Center to establish a strategic framework and a regional identity on nature-centered solutions for resilience and disaster risk management in the Southwest Indian Ocean, as much using nature, but also mitigating negative impacts on the environment. So I established two main goals for the project. The first one is about embedding nature-centered solutions and climate adaptation action without Pirwa's logic and strategy. And the second one is to establish the first framework for assessing and reducing the environmental and climate footprint of Pirwa's activities. These long-term primary goals will be supported by short-term objectives that have been established for the MARRES final project frame that will be mainly discussed hereafter in the next slides. So during the last 3 months, the achievements of the project implementation have been creating the foundations of the long-term goals. Their purpose is to move from a general interest in nature solution issues toward a more structured and operational institutional position. And 4 main achievements were reached. First, the enabling conditions for defining a strategy and positioning legitimate and actionable was identified. Second, these actions during the last 3 months created a momentum, visibility, and legitimacy by generating visible actions and first concrete opportunities. Thirdly, the actions prepared future accountability by opening work on environmental footprint and the future evaluation of ecosystem-based interventions. Finally, these last 3 months actions created the conditions for implementing the NBS by looking at partnerships, donor opportunities, internal organization, and practicalities. So to summarize, the last 3 months actions turned ambition into action and anchored long-term institutional changes. So let's have a look on partnerships and funding dynamics, for instance. One of the key findings of the last 3 months of work is that partnerships and funding are deeply interrelated. We cannot build one without the other. After 2-3 months, a lot of stakeholders have been engaged and a lot of progress has been done on this side. Concretely, a concept note has been drafted and submitted to the Michelin Foundation, for example, jointly with the Madagascar Red Cross and the Comorian Red Crescent, focusing on coastal ecosystem restoration and community resilience. The second one is underway with Just Dig It NGO in Tanzania with the Tanzania Red Cross. In parallel, initial donor mapping has been conducted, covering private foundations, EU institutions, and public institutions in general, including Green Climate Fund, where we have been giving to the Pirwa Center a clear picture on where to invest its business development efforts and how to drive partnership approach, since both are interlinked. We will see later that partnerships are also essential for technical relevance and legitimacy of the project. Another practical outcome of the last 3 months was my contribution to co-facilitating a nature-based solutions training in Mauritius, dedicated to national societies of the area, Madagascar, Comoros, Mauritius, and Seychelles. The project was aiming at strengthening the national societies' capacities to assess their interest about the topic and to engage with other actors such as Mauritius authorities and university. But the project also confirmed first a strong interest on the topic of all the Red Cross societies, outcome being the Michelin Foundation proposal, for instance, but it also confirmed that there is a strong gap in the Red Cross societies movement, knowledge on and understanding on how nature-based solutions complex, need technicality, and that we will need to build collaborations to overcome this gap with other actors. Another outcome of these 3 months was to establish a new organization model based on the existing one here, and the objective was to create a new structure that will be more adapted to our ambitions, and particularly about nature-based solutions and environment. I will not go into the details, but what is important to keep in mind is that this change will not be planned before late 2027, and there will be one dedicated human resource dedicated to environment and climate and nature-based solutions. So the last 3 months I've also started building for the future by working on the carbon footprint studies, initiating studies about our carbon footprint, about waste management in humanitarian settings that will enable to establish for PIRWA an environmental baseline and inform our footprint reduction action plan that will certainly start in 2027, not before. But we also conducted work about methodology, nature-based solution cost calculation, cost-benefit analysis based on different methodologies, about collaborations, about innovation, and the collaboration about research. If we look at the challenges and limitations that we are facing for nature-based solutions and environment topics within PIRWA, is that first, as already stated, NBS require an expertise and the scientific and technical knowledge and are complex. So on the long term, we cannot work on that without partnerships, as already discussed. There is a strong funding uncertainty. The economic model heavily still depend on donor. So we will need to work on establishing a funding strategy, and particularly if you want to kickstart quickly the things, we need to identify quickly funds to start active things. So as I already mentioned, we will depend a lot of partnerships. The success of the project will require active involvement of national societies for communities involvement and implementation, conservation NGOs and academic institutions for scientific contribution and fundraising, and donors, of course, will be also necessary for the long-term and structuring funding. And finally, we have institutional constraints. The project is still in a structuring phase, with still validation steps needed, workload overlap with conflicting priorities and limited in-house expertise and capacity, which means that major part of the project will not be expected before late 2026, 2027. So if we look about the way forward and opportunities after these 3 months of project, we are not going to multiply projects too quickly. But now it will be important to stabilize a model where science, operations, community practice, and environment accountability are institutionally connected. The means finalizing the roadmap and strategy will be important because opportunistic approach is only okay on the short term. On the long term, we need to have a clear map. We need to consolidate the internal structure, completing the environmental baseline and translating the first opportunities into concrete pilots. And at the same time, there are opportunities for PIRWA to position itself as a regional reference on nature-based solutions for disaster risk reductions, while strengthening donor engagement, technical partnerships, and regional visibility. To progress, few success factors will be necessary. We need to have a strong institutional anchor, both internally and externally. We will need a minimum level of dedicated funding to initiate actions and recruitment. We must stay aligned with HQ strategy to avoid fragmentation and to secure validation approvals. We need national societies and key partners to remain actively engaged, as they are the operational backbone and of any field implementation. And finally, evidence, partnerships, and visibility need to be coordinated together and must be linked, because the scale-up will only be possible with these three components together. So, a few points of discussion. The interest on nature-based solutions within PIRWA, within the movement, is strong, is genuine and growing, but it is not yet translated into fully institutionalized approach. The gap is precisely what the project has started to address. The transition is possible, but it's not straightforward. It requires time, the right partnerships, dedicated technical capacity. PIRWA's strongest value in this space is not to become a conservation organization, but to translate, bridge, and coordinate DRR practices with ecosystem thinking and operational realities with scientific evidence. Technical legitimacy remains essential. Without credible ecological expertise and strong partnerships, the approach loses credibility with both donors, communities, and other actors. Funding is not just a resource question. It actively shapes how our ambitions can transition and how fast the growing can be and how quick we can be. And finally, PIRWA is to really be advocate for nature-based solutions externally. It must also demonstrate environmental responsibility internally, which is exactly why the footprint studies and reduction matter. To conclude, through this work, I've been applying MARRES competences to a real disaster management institution and helping PIRWA's structure its strategic evolution about the topic. This opens concrete perspectives for future action, research, and funding to scale up nature-based solutions within humanitarian practices. And I hope to be able to propose a pathway that bridges ecology and humanitarian problematics together in the region to enable future research and action and funding opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. So I'm going to open the floor, of course, to questions. I think we can start maybe, so let's start online first and on-site, and I will change after. So Martin, if you want to start.
Yes. Thank you, Stefan, for the presentation. Okay, my first question is pretty basic, but it's important, I think. How do you define nature-based solution?
Well, the definition is quite wide, but I think that would be to use existing nature services and ecosystems to do their job in the end. And there is a tendency in general to replace these services because there is a destruction, there is disappearance of ecosystems by other artificial solutions. And so the idea is really to see how we can continue to exploit natural solutions to restore resilience of the coastline, for example, to protect populations from certain disasters.
Okay, but what concretely do you have in mind? Do you have a few examples of a nature-based solution that works?
Well, the basic one that I've been hearing since I arrived in PIRWA is about mangrove restoration, for instance. Mangrove are protecting coast of erosion, of storms, protecting livelihoods of fishers. That's the interest of nature-based solutions, is that there is a wide range of effects, positive impacts, because there is dedicated, let's say, practical, visible impact. I mean, as I mentioned, a mangrove is going to protect an area from a storm or from a surge, for example. But also what we don't see, that it's also protecting an ecosystem that is providing fishes and resources to local communities.
Okay. So mangrove is one solution. Can you give more example, please? Because mangrove is one little example. Yeah.
Coral reef protecting the shore again. We know that seagrass meadows are also protecting the shores. Forests are protecting the slopes of mountains, of erosion, of landslides. What else? Simple grass protection in the coast on the beach, for example, and we saw solutions in Mauritius, for instance, where the government has been facilitating projects to re-green the coast with grass, simple grass. Let's say this was also helping to reduce the erosion of the coastline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are many solutions.
Okay, many solutions. And then what about the disasters? Can you make a list of the potential disasters that you listed and that you can solve with mangrove, corals, or seaweed, and other that you cannot solve maybe?
Well, solve is a big word. I wouldn't say solve, but I could mitigate. First, I think it's important to be realistic also about the impact of any short solution, natural or not natural. So we're talking about, I would talk more about mitigation. But for example, a cyclone would affecting one side, one island, for instance, would be mitigated by preserving its mangrove, by preserving its coastal reef. Even though these ecosystems will be affected themselves by the disaster, but we know that they can regenerate if they have the good conditions to do so. As I mentioned before, forests are the best tool to prevent landslides in many areas. Deforestation has been very often the causes of a lot of landslides in different contexts. I don't have any in mind for the moment. But
is there a disaster that you cannot mitigate? Did you work on the risk that there is? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, eruptions, volcanic eruptions are clearly something that we cannot specifically mitigate with natural solutions. And it would be more about prevention actions by avoiding to have people settling in potentially affected areas, by protecting people when there is an alert. This kind of solutions. I think yes, earthquakes too, more complex and to mitigate effect, because principally the effects are on artificial constructions and human-made constructions.
Okay. Okay, so thank you, Stéphane. It's okay for me.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, so I will try to go then next to Jana.
Yes. Thank you very much, Stéphane. A very interesting project. I would like to ask you about what you mentioned on the challenges for partnership dependence. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, and also give me some examples on how maybe hard can be this part to involve these nature-based solutions involving these partnerships? Thank you.
Well, first is that the challenge is that this is creating a dependency of external actors. Firstly, because in the end, we cannot be at least as an entity of the Red Cross, we will not be able to be an entity that we have the capacity to address all the scope needed and technicality needed for NBS. So this is first let's say the main reason of this challenge. As I mentioned, also this is going to be indirectly connected to funding, because we don't have access to all funding capability, say, offer as a Red Cross. So working in partnership with other institutions will open also a wider range of funding opportunities. So that's what I was meaning about this partnership dependence, because this will require a lot of engagement, time. It's time consuming. I saw it during the last 3 months. I've been engaging only with 15, 20 different actors. It's time consuming. It's not simple always. We need to prioritize. So we need to clearly identify which will be the first actors that would be the most relevant to approach and to engage with. Sometimes we make mistakes. This happens, and we let's say the approach work doesn't meet any goal, but that's life. But also we know that working collaboration and partnership comes with difficulties and drawbacks, and we don't share the same culture, we don't share the same practices, the same standards. So we need to align all of these, to do compromises, to overcome these differences and to work together. I've been working for 15 years now in the humanitarian business, let's say, sector. It's all about partnership too, and it's for different reasons. But I know how it's complex to work with partners, because sometimes the things align, but with the times we can disalign, let's say, objectives. And it's a continuous work and engagement work, efforts to do. Again, I mean, you have to do compromise sometimes with your usual way of working, so it's not easy. That's why I mentioned as a challenge, because out of the practicality of doing it, I know that maintaining this is also going to take time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jean-Vincent.
Hi, Stéphane, thank you. Do you think the Red Cross has the legitimacy to conduct this kind of operation? In other words, wouldn't other institutions see this as exceeding their authority? Maybe there is an obstacle between institutions.
No, on the contrary. I mean, if we take the angle of resilience and disaster risk reduction, we have the full authority, capacity, and legitimacy about it globally. Obviously, as I mentioned, we are not going to become a conservation organization, and we will not have the capacity to do this together alone. But we can be the organization that is bringing together these two thematics, and in the end, that is going to contribute as much on resilience and on indirectly on ecosystem protection, because this match the unique goal to protect populations, protect resources from disasters. Obviously, the Red Crosses in general across the world have also challenges about legitimacy in general. We are supposed to be auxiliary, let's say, body of institutions and of the government in many countries. But we know that this is a sovereignty topic and question in many countries, quite sensitive. So this is complex to address in general, not specifically about nature-based solutions, but in general, Red Cross need to, let's say, to earn their recognition in general. This will obviously include nature-based solutions within the package, if I say so. And but again, I think we are really linking authorities, governments, communities, technicality. If we can bring together conservation actors, we can be a good player and a credible, legitimate player on this topic for resilience.
Okay, and of all the steps already complete, which were the most complicated?
Which one was? I don't know if it was the most complicated, but the most time-consuming was engagement with stakeholders. Completely, definitely. For me personally, technically, yes, the most complex was about working on the carbon footprint study and establishing also the terms of reference for the waste management study. A little bit less this one, but the carbon footprint, because for me it's a completely new topic. If I had to look at the topic from very far away in the past, this time with the Pure Waste Center, the ambitions are so high that we really want to go into details and to be able to analyze step by step what is our footprint, to be able then to establish the actions to change this and to improve this. So I would say on the time and manage with other priorities, it was the engagement. On the technical part, it was more about the carbon footprint study.
And a last question.
Yeah, you're fine.
How long do you think it will take to fully implement the project?
Well, as I said, I'm not expecting major changes before end of 2026, 27. Now we are submitting, we just submitted the proposal to the Fondation Michelin, for instance. We are not expecting an answer before the end of the year. Carbon footprint studies will be conducted until the end of the year, so any action plan will start only in 2027. So I would say that we will have tangible and really strong higher progress to showcase in the end and really to continue to initiate the machine, let's say 2027. Even for if I want to recruit one dedicated resource, I will need to secure funding, I will need to get approval. It's a big show in this kind of structure, particularly now with funding restriction, it's more and more difficult to open new positions. So I'm not expecting, again, not be able to recruit somebody dedicated before 2027. That position could accelerate then the path later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. We still have time for one more question if you want. So I can also open the floor to the audience. So yeah, Alex, if you just for him to hear you well.
Hope it's not too loud now. I was just wondering a little bit with the funding issues that you were talking about, or trying to get initial funding, of course. Is there a way to build in future mechanisms to make money back from nature-based solutions? Like, I don't know if this is something that works, but I assume mangroves through blue credits can maybe offset it. Although that's, of course, carbon credits are always a very big mixed bag. I just kind of was wondering if that was something that you guys have thought about a little bit, if there's like alternative pathways that money can also be made through the nature-based solutions, if that's something that you guys have looked at.
Well, it's difficult to be honest, not yet at this stage. I think my focus first has been to find money, very basically, and if I'm very basic, then is to see how we can showcase and we can show that these solutions in the end are more economic and more efficient in the long term, at least. So that's why I'm also looking at cost-based approaches, calculations, and to see how we can valorize the impacts of ecosystems on these questions. But also, it's our economic model in the Red Cross, which is also a bit complex, because if I work with partners will also need to be funded. So we need to find the right balance in between funding ourselves, funding projects, funding the partners, secure the things on long term. So no, indeed, clearly not, and particularly also because we don't know very well this kind of funding. And I was mentioning the Green Climate Fund, but so far, I mean, the Red Cross is not accredited to get funding from the Green Climate Fund. So we need to identify partners that are accredited, start to work with them, learn from them, and to build on that. And then maybe this will be more steps. But this could be part of the strategy. It doesn't, in the end, doesn't prevent that. Could be one of our strategical axes to elaborate and to explore in the long term.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. Anyone else? No? Good. Good for you. Okay. Well, thanks again, Stéphane, and well done for your presentation. So we're going to continue, and so this time we're going to welcome Léonore.
Hello, everyone.
Good luck, Léonore.
Thank you, Stéphane.
So Leonor, you can
So-
start share your screen whenever you're ready.
Great. Okay, share. Yeah, I think this should now appear. Let me know when it's okay for you.
Yeah, we all see it correctly. So yeah, you have, as I will repeat, 15 minutes of presentation, and then we will open the floor to the questions. Best of luck, Leonor.
Thank you. Hello again, everyone. So I'm also going to talk about resilience and disaster risk management, but I'm going to focus on marine heat wave management in the Pacific region and extension to the Caribbean. A little bit of context first, of course. So maybe just to set the scene, marine heat wave have a clear definition, which is anomalously warm, prolonged, and discrete events that occur when temperatures are warmer than the 90th percentile and last at least 5 days. So maybe in more classical term, it's when the temperatures are higher than the top 10% of temperatures that were ever registered in one spot, then for 5 days, then it's declared a marine heat wave. The main impacts are species mass mortality, coral bleaching, seagrass death, species shift, and trophic chain simplification, just to go quickly over it. Now, marine heat wave, they are increasing in frequency, so they are becoming a major concern because their frequency impact and also new regions are impacted today. So since 2018, there has been a recording of plus 54% of marine heat wave days. So it clearly shows an increase, and we are going to look at the different episodes in the next slides. It's heavily linked to climate change, of course. And as we know, climate change model projection are still forecasting warmer temperature for the years and decades to come. So it's definitely a worry there that we are going to see more and more marine heat wave. However, the immediate and long-term impact are not yet well known 100%. So there is definitely things to uncover there and to understand the dynamics and mechanics. And as well, there is no systematic inclusion of neither anticipatory action planning, but also globally disaster risk management tools for marine heat wave in ecosystem management hasn't been yet fully integrated. So this is also something that we are going to question today together. In terms of the major heat waves that have been hitting the Pacific, since 98, there have been 8 recorded incidents. You can see the major ones here, the 8 ones I'm mentioning. And in the Caribbean, it's been 6 since 98. What we can see here, just by having a glance at this table, is that the frequency is increasing. Why does this matter? It's because it's giving less time for the reef and global marine ecosystem to recover from each episode. So the situation is in a bite spiral dynamic. Also, there are more and more prolonged. And what scientific have shown is that a marine heat wave is serious depending also on the duration. So for example, in terms of alerts, maybe just to give you a few metrics, Pacific and Caribbean regions, the threshold for marine heat waves alerts is around above 29 degrees, 30 degrees of sea surface temperature. And then it's also linked to the duration. So above 4 weeks and 8 weeks. And as the duration increases, the higher the impact on the ecosystem. They also have a wider footprint. So if before we would see marine heat wave hitting maybe one specific local spot that is maybe more shallow water or different characteristic, now we can see basin-wide or region-wide marine heat wave, even international marine heat wave. And this is also an issue because it's providing less option to have thermic shelter, also alternative ecosystems that could help regenerate the ones that have been degraded. It's also linked, and that has been a recent study about the link to the El Nino phenomena. And when there is a prolonged El Nino in the Pacific, because the phenomena normally is centered in the Pacific, there are 12 times higher chances of marine heat wave and of the marine heat wave being prolonged. Just to give you an idea, I've highlighted here in bold the marine heat waves in the Pacific that have been linked and synchronized with El Nino effect. So last one being 2023, 2024, that has been particularly serious. And we can see that the Caribbean region, although it's not directly normally impacted by El Nino, has been suffering from those prolonged marine heat wave, and it has been also triggering higher sea surface temperature in the region. And we can see that the major ones are actually linked. So it's also becoming an international phenomenon, despite it being El Nino being centered in the Pacific. What I've been doing is that I've been exchanging and working, and we're going to talk about that, with a project that is centered in the French Pacific, New Caledonia, Polynesia, and Wallis and Futuna, which is called MAEWA. It's piloted and supervised by a team of researchers from ERD, and it has linked also to IFREMER, but globally there are more than 30, it's a consortia, and there are more than 30 different people, not people, but institutions that are working with MAEWA, so I haven't put all the logos just to not crowd the place. But it's a multidisciplinary project, which is very interesting. So it's already embedded in the structure of the project that you have natural science and social science that are working on establishing the past and future characteristic of marine heat wave in the Pacific. They are also looking into the adaptability of coral reef and marine culture species, mitigation and restorative measures, also the link with ciguatera proliferation, and the socio-economic, cultural sensitivity and resilience of the region to marine heat wave. So it's really centered around marine heat wave as a shock. There is currently a strong interest from the French government, but also other international and scientific bodies, to invest into risk management for marine resources. And more specifically in the Pacific, there is a will in New Caledonia to create a marine heat wave observatory based on the observation and results from MAEWA. So there is definitely a dynamic there that we can leverage. Also, marine heat waves, they are now more predictable events. We have the weather forecast, we have the tool, we have the surface temperature monitoring and forecasting tools. So it's definitely something we can predict, but there have been limited application of risk management tools and methodology to marine heat waves when we compare to other natural risks that Stefan mentioned already, or also even when we compare it to heat wave or drought management on land-based resources and spaces. So definitely there is all of this that is implicating right now. Now, if I talk a little bit more about the project I've been conducted with MAEWA team, is to contribute definitely to the effort to expand knowledge on marine heat wave and strengthen ecosystem, but also communities resilience. So MAEWA is really insisting on the community resilience and application of science and marine ecosystem management for community resilience. And the primary objective I have currently with MAEWA is to contribute to the project by advising the project team on disaster risk management, how you can do it, and how could we integrate that to MAEWA. And also my second objective was to explore the possible replication of the project in another area, here the Caribbean, centered in Guadeloupe. In terms of short-term goal, we hope to have a project that is consolidated in the RM approach, so disaster risk management once again, and also to have an initial feasibility study for possible replication in the future in Guadeloupe and more globally the French Caribbean islands. In terms of long-term, it's to contribute to the global dialogue on marine heat wave management and to lay the foundation for replication of MAEWA in the future on marine heat wave management. In terms of results, the first one I've been focusing on is to develop tools to for the MAEWA team to be able to apply DRM planning at community level on marine heat wave. So for that, I've been designing a template for disaster risk management plan, and more specifically marine heat wave management plan. And we also applied to a grant so that we could pilot this plan potentially in the future. And we're going to talk about that. So we could pilot this plan and have this workshop. I also aim, as a second result, to have a training session and a sensitization on disaster risk management, anticipatory action concept, and how to apply them to marine heat wave with the MAEWA team, and also equip them with the adequate tools and kits so that they could replicate in the future this session with their different publics and their partners. And we are also looking at how to transpose all of that. So any tools that we would develop for New Caledonia, because right now I'm centering on New Caledonia, would have to be applicable and reusable for their other geographies, so French Polynesia, Wallis and Futuna, and hopefully in the future, the Caribbean region or other marine heat wave impacted region. So this is the timeline, and I'm going to develop that in a little bit, but I've been centered around the template, the replication study, and now I'm focusing on the different tools so that in September we can have a work session together with the MAIWA team to go over all of these tools and to finalize them. In terms of methodology, what I've been using is mainly MAIWA documentation and all the deliverables they have been producing so far, but also secondary data, project document, policies, and other examples from other regions, but also the Caribbean area. And I've also been using and mobilizing my experience in disaster risk management. In terms of results, right now, what I found is that normally we should be able to apply, thankfully, the disaster risk management principle and concept to marine heat wave, because as I said, it's something that we can predict right now, and we have the necessary structures and actors in Caledonia, New Caledonia, to apply that. So I've been building a template with specific section, but centered around action. And action would be designed for preparedness, prepositioning, anticipatory action, response, and early recovery phase. The template will be finalized, as I said, in September 2026 workshop with the team, with the hope to apply it in 2027, and also the hope to apply it to other risks. So I've been building tools and templates that potentially the actors in New Caledonia invested in marine resource management could mobilize for other type of risk. In terms of the replication, can we replicate MAIWA in another area, and more specifically in the French Caribbean islands centered in Guadeloupe? I've been building scoring matrix to assess different sectors of the project and see whether the conditions are there in Guadeloupe. And so I've been centered around actor and institutional presence, technical and scientific context, social acceptance, project implementation, and budget and funding. So the project should be replicable with quite a high score, although there are stumbling blocks around actor and institutional presence and budget and funding that we could discuss more at a later stage. I've also been revising some of the tools they are using in order to collect data to inform the disaster risk management planning workshop. And so because the tools they are using right now are not exactly aligned with what we use generally in this type of disaster risk management strategy and exercise, I've been building new ones and mixing kind of the lessons from both. So now they also have a key informant interview template and a focus group discussion template that they can mobilize and they could reuse for other initiative and area or risk. In terms of next steps, as I said, it's September 2026, where we would have a finalization workshop and sensitization workshop with the MAIWA team. And providing we have the grants, we hope to pilot that with the partners and the audience in New Caledonia and potentially French Polynesia in spring, summer 2027. In terms of limitation, what I faced so far with my contribution to MAIWA is that I've been able to rely heavily on secondary data, especially because MAIWA team right now was not really available to have direct contributions. That's why we integrated that to their annual workshop in 2026. And we're also waiting for some of the results right now. MAIWA is still unrolling. So there are a lot of initiatives that I'm pending results that I need to inform the process. We are also dependent on funding if we want to have live training and live session and pilot all the tools. And also one of the major stumbling blocks is that the context is quite different here in the Caribbean, and so there have not been a project similar to MAIWA yet. So some of the data that MAIWA has for the Pacific is not yet available for the Caribbean. So definitely we will need to investigate more to ensure the replication is possible. Finally, the major stumbling block is also the disaster risk management, so the integration and operationalization of that within MAIWA is present on paper, but hasn't been formalized in the activity planning and the fund and expertise we can find in the team. So we are kind of post-integrating that, which is always slightly less comfortable than when it's planned and operationalized from the beginning. In conclusion, this project has been really interesting for me because I've learned a lot about marine heatwave, but also about a project multidisciplinary with a lot of different actors like ERD, IFOMER, scientific bodies, and actors on the ground in a new geography, New Caledonia. But for MAEWA, we hope that by September or 2027, they would be better equipped on disaster risk management. Definitely, this is boosting their timeline because I'm doing the nitty-gritty work behind the scene, and they would be able to hit the ground running in 2027 when hopefully we would have the fund, or they would find other pathways to have this workshop embedded in program action for 2027. And in terms of conclusion, I think that marine heatwaves are a global threat and to marine ecosystem globally. It's linked definitely to the El Nino effect, and it's worsening in impact and magnitude. Scientific monitoring and reactive measures are no longer sufficient. New Caledonia is definitely the ideal laboratory for pilots, but we would need to have a widespread marine heatwave management if we want to have an impact. Caribbean and the Guadeloupe region are definitely good candidates for that as well. And DRM concepts and tools are applicable to marine heatwave for marine ecosystem preservation. And I would like to emphasize the importance of risk culture integration from the beginning, which is making MAEWA project also more interesting because they have this natural science and social science integration and link from the beginning. With that, I'll be taking questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Leonor. So, of course, yes, we are going to open the floor with questions. And first, I will turn this time to Diana with Jean-Vincent, and I will finish with Martin.
Thank you. Thank you, Leonor. I have a question regarding the involvement of the community. What is the level of the involvement of the community in this implementation of the risk management template? Like,
sorry, because your question broke at the end.
Okay. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
So I will repeat. So what is the level of the involvement of the community at the moment of implementing this template? Like, because in my head, the most affected on these marine heat waves are the community. What is the level? Are they interested? Not they like to collaborate on that?
Yeah. So I'm only going to talk about New Caledonia because that's where I've been focusing right now on the MAEWA project. So first of all, there are already engagement with community in terms to assess their risk culture and their awareness about marine heatwave and the impact it can have on their resources and their habits and link to the marine resources. So this is already there. What would happen in 2027 if we have the workshop is that their representative derivated from the current discussions they are having on the ground right now, their representative would be integrated as one of the stakeholders that need to be there in the room. So as for any other disaster risk management planning, there would be representatives from the government, institution, the traditional and community leaders, but also the fishermen, the tourism sector, like any other person that could represent the different side and version of the community interacting with the marine resources would have to be involved if we want the plan to be successful, definitely. So that's what we are looking at, if we can do that in 2027.
Thank you.
You have another one?
No.
I'll come back to you. Okay, Jean-Vincent.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. Maybe I missed the information, but you work alone or with a laboratory, research laboratory or institution?
No. So I work alone. I'm based in the Caribbean, so that's why I've been looking at the replication. But I work in link with my MAEWA team, so we have different engagement and consultation together. Right now, it has been more less heavy than what we would have hoped for because of the availability. But that's why in September we have hopefully they are looking into budget right now, a solution for me to come to New Caledonia to have the workshop and to have this work session together. Or we will do that remotely, and fingers crossed we have the grant in 2027 to implement and to pilot the tools I've been developing with them.
Okay. So what concrete action can be taken to prepare for a marine heat wave specifically?
Okay. So right now it's being mapped out by my team on the ground. So they are exploring that and they are consulting actors on what they want to do. But definitely there are some interest because they're also focusing on marine aquaculture. So in their interest on how we can protect the spaces where they are working from the marine heat wave, how they can collect samples that are more risk than the other, how they could shelter them, identify shelter spaces where maybe some species could be protected and to help regenerate. But definitely this is a global trend and we cannot do anything against the sun. So as for as for heat wave, right now it's more about mitigation measure and anticipating the worst so that we can regenerate rather than we won't be able to deploy massive shade over the entire ocean. That's for sure, but to identify shelter in the sea, to collect and to secure species and fragments where and when needed, and to try to get ahead of the crisis, basically.
Okay. And would it be more beneficial to establish strong marine protected area to allow the ecosystem to have a greater resistance and resilience more than other action?
They are right now looking into that. However, the thing is, it depends of where and how exposed to marine heat wave is the marine protected area you are protecting. But definitely, any heat protected or more resilient area we can identify would have to be protected so that it can serve as a shelter. But if you are identifying the marine protected area without doing that, you are at risk to protect an area that is actually some kind of heat spot, and you won't be able to do anything about it. So this is definitely a consideration that is being discussed right now with the scientific team from MAEWA and the planning agencies there in New Caledonia.
Okay.
But right now, I just want to emphasize that the project is still at the study phase and discussing the different possibilities. It hasn't been set in stone yet.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Vincent. So I will turn to Martin now. Martin, we don't hear you. You have your mic mute.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Leonor, for your presentation. My first question is, so you said you work with IRD and IFREMER. Do you work only with those research centers or other international for heat wave models? Can you tell us about the models and the visibility you have for the future?
Yeah. Okay. So I work with the MAEWA team, which is composed of people and representatives from IRD and IFREMER. So that's the main lead in the project, but there are more than 30 partners and scientific bodies that are involved in MAEWA. MAEWA is basing the projection model for marine heat wave, and they are issuing a risk bulletin. They are basing it on NOAA, because NOAA is providing a global tool and monitoring for surface temperature and marine heat wave alert. So they are basing their alerts on the thresholds that have been already established by NOAA, which is also a concern for longevity, definitely. But so right now they are matching and they are finding the similarities. It's working well. They are also using and cross-checking the information, triangulating it with two other models. But it's mainly on the NOAA scale, especially for the coral bleaching warning that they are using.
Okay. So now I would like, I don't know, maybe you heard about a new El Nino in the Pacific. So I know there is model that already exists. Can you detail a bit the model of the new El Nino coming and the impact it can have in the Pacific on sea life and on humans?
Okay. To be honest with you, this is my work for the summer because now I've been more centered on the replication study and building the templates that we could use in the workshop in 2026. And now across the summer, I'm going to study the projection and do the scenarios so that we can discuss them with the team. So to be honest with you, I won't venture a guess right now.
You have not yet answers. Okay, so let's do it in another way. Imagine there is like a big El Nino in the Pacific. What would be the impact on the local communities in New Caledonia, for example?
Okay, so the impact right now that has been tracked and the initial leads we have with the impact on the community is first of all that there is disruption of the marine ecosystem with the coral bleaching and some species that are perturbated in the recycle cycle. And so it would mean that in the months after, and if it's a particularly heavy one, the years after, there would be less marine resources to be fished, for example, and it would take time for it to come back. There is also the issue with ciguatera because they are starting to highlight that with the higher the temperatures, the more toxin is present in the fish and in higher proportion. So that would also perturbate the possible trading and consumption habits from the communities. And there are also a lot of communities that are end fishing, let's say, or picking in the plateau in New Caledonia, if I understood well. And that could also have an impact because it's very shallow water and definitely it's going to be a boil system and everything is going to be dead there in terms of crustacean or end peak resources. So that's the impact we are forecasting in terms of major El Nino.
Okay, and what those consequences can have like as an impact on the social life in New Caledonia? Like what can happen? Okay, maybe they will have less fish, maybe they will eat less fish because of ciguatera, but what can happen to the humans, you know, in New Caledonia? Is there risk of
Well, it would be highly disruptive in terms of livelihood and resources for this community. It's also fish are also a traditional. They have also a cultural marine resource as a cultural value. So it would be an impact on economics, but also on their way of living culturally and how they celebrate on a daily life. So that's also something we need to investigate, and that's why we want to have the plan, disaster risk management plan, because there would have to be some kind of social security net coverage for those communities in terms of marine heat wave to anticipate the longer term disruption to their economic and cultural habits so that they don't enter a vulnerability spiral, basically. But this disruption of the economics all across the board, basically.
Thank you. It's good for me.
Good for you, okay? Still have a bit of time, so maybe I can open also the question to like you in the room, or if you have a few more also coming.
I have one question more. Given that each location has its own specific characteristic, is it truly possible to replicate the same tool between locations?
Yeah, definitely. So what would happen is that normally with disaster risk management and for marine heat wave, it seems from what I've been testing so far to work the same. You can have the same tool. It's just that you adapt the thresholds, for example, to the area if it's different. And what would change mainly would be the outcome of the discussion with the stakeholders, the community, the representative on the ground, where maybe they would orientate it on different solutions. For example, in New Caledonia and the Pacific globally, I anticipate that there would be an interest and a focus on the preservation of aquaculture, because it's a sector that is very developed there. However, in the Caribbean, that's not something that is as developed at all. We don't have the pearl farming. We don't have a lot of what they have in the Pacific. So definitely the interest and the protection and mitigation measures would center on different, for example, livelihoods. So that's how in disaster risk management, you manage to have tools that are multi-risk, let's say, and then you adapt the threshold and level of alerts to the risk, to the specific location, and it's more on the different actors that are involved and the solutions that are prioritized that we're going to see a difference. And in terms of prioritization of the different solutions, I'm calling it solution, but you understand me, that would be adopted. We are working right now. There is another person in MARRES that is working on a kind of assessment and scoring matrix of the solutions, so that with the first pilots, we are able a little bit to triage the ones that are more efficient or less cost benefits wise, also less heavy to implement, so that we can also prioritize them in other contexts or other parts of the country. So there is also this way of thinking with MARRES to assess and analyze the different solutions that are put on the table in a more objective way, to try to focus on the ones that will have the most return on investment, because as we know, we don't have a lot of money to go about this type of subject. So definitely this is a worry, and we want to focus on the right ones at the right time to be the most efficient.
Okay, thank you.
Anything to add? It was the same question.
That was a good answer.
Okay, I'm checking. So no, online, no questions. Do you have any question from the audience? No. Okay. Well, thanks, Leonor. I guess more like curiosity question now, because I'm not part of the jury, but I'd just like to understand. So, have you been able to go on site? So, because you're saying also on a long-term period, so it's like something you're going to be able to do for the next perhaps month or.
Right now, I haven't been able to go to New Caledonia due to budget constraint, but we are finger crossing for September. We are looking into solutions right now so that we can have the in MARRES team workshop together live. And we are finger crossing as well for the grants that we applied to, that we'll have the results around October, November 2026. With the hope that we can pilot with me on the ground in 2027. So fingers crossed.
Okay, we will be a finger crossed for you. No, that's really nice for you, or even like with the project of Stéphane, is to see, of course, what goes after MARRES, because I know we're part of the Symposium, but it's long-term project, so it's super nice. Okay, well, thanks again, Leonor. Well done. And so we're going to be on a little break right now. We are going to be back at 3:45 approximately. So stay around, no worries, and we will be back with Hugo on site. So thank you and see you in a bit. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. We are now live again, and we will continue this session about risk and resilience of tropical coasts. And we are with Hugo first, and we will finish after with Alban. Hugo, the floor is yours. You have like 15 minutes of presentation and 15 minutes of questions.
Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me well. So today's topic will be on the challenges, constraints, and perspectives regarding the design of integrated coastal adaptation initiatives or projects in small island developing states. Just to precise, I was a student at MSc MARRES Blue Managers program alongside a full-time job position at Expertise France, which helped me to ground part of the knowledge acquired during the first semester into a real operational context. So let me start with a brief introduction and analytical context. So today we'll talk about SIDS, small island developing states, but what are they? SIDS are formally recognized as a distinct UN category since 1992 at the Rio Earth Summit. It's important to precise that it's a political construct with a dedicated international agenda and not a proper scientific definition. So there are 58 countries and territories around the world. denominated as seeds, and they are profoundly heterogeneous in terms of size, geography, institutional capacity, or income. But what they share is a paradox, a structural paradox. They have a minimal contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions, but disproportionate exposure to climate change impacts. Seeds are defined sometimes as early adapters, where their societies are first to confront climate change impacts, and so it can give lessons to the world, as they are the first one concerned by those impacts. In terms of coastal spaces, the challenge is twofold, actually. There are the slow onset processes, such as gradual shoreline retreat, sediment deficit, ecosystem degradation, and sea level rise, which undermines the long-term planning capacity. There are also rapid onset events, such as storm surges, cyclone-induced flooding, that can cause direct damage to assets, livelihoods, but also cultural heritage. So to face it, there is a growing international recognition of the need to move from and to shift from gray infrastructure solutions to nature-based solution and more integrated approach. So regarding the project itself, the main objective was to contribute to the identification and design of integrated coastal adaptation project in seed context, focusing mostly on coastal erosion and ecosystem degradation as primary entry points, and with a focus on integrating nature-based solution into project intervention. I worked as a project officer at Expertise France, and I dedicated extra time working on this topic alongside other portfolio responsibilities. So I will explain it a bit more, but literature review, contextual analysis, field mission, stakeholder consultation, and also concept note drafting and writing, besides all the process of internal validation support. Why focusing on the project design phase? It's because it's the strategic step of project cycle and the very first one. It's very important to focus on this step, as it's where you can reduce or embed the maladaptation risk regarding coastal adaptation, but also focus on ensuring local ownership and preparing all the analytical groundwork transferable to other seed contexts. So I just want to precise that for some confidentiality purposes, some details are not communicated right now through this presentation. So regarding professional context, what is the company I work for? So it's a French public agency for international technical cooperation. It's part of the Agence Française de Développement group. The mission is to strengthen public policies with SDG Sustainable Development Goal alignment through multi-sectoral expertise. So the technical agency is working on governance, climate, health, biodiversity issues, with more than 300 projects in progress in the world, in more than 140 countries of operation. There are two main work streams. The first one is project design and implementation, but there is also the deployment of international technical experts in countries. The modalities of various. It goes from methodological and technical guidance, capacity building, but also direct fundings to NGOs, for example. So I worked at the Sustainable Development Department within the Biodiversity Hub, in the Ocean Unit, to be more precise, alongside a unit coordinator and other projects officer. Regarding the results, I will start with the operational results. So I conducted a literature review on a specific project, contextual analysis and stakeholder mapping with a field mission, and it aimed to write concept notes. So I wrote concept notes on a specific project. And there were like two parallel other processes. So all the stakeholder consultation can be potential donors, but also the beneficiaries of the future projects, and internal validation process and quality review inside the organization itself. Now I wanted to focus a bit more on the analytical results, and I want to highlight four main findings regarding SEEDS adaptation and how to elaborate adaptation policies and strategies. So based on both literature findings, but also empirical findings on case study I worked for, the governance of climate change adaptation, it seems, tends to be kind of weak with overlapping mandates, limited interagency coordination, for example, between the agencies working on terrestrial and marine ecosystem, and there is a persistent gap between formal policy commitments versus implementation capacity. And the structural position of SEEDS itself, which is the structural limited domestic capacity, create an external dependency to external funding. But this is also, they have also a barrier to absorb it and sustain funding effectively. So on the project I worked, I had some empirical findings too, that in the targeted countries, there is indeed a fragmented institutional landscape, a fragmented data storage, with a lot of interoperability issues between the different agencies having their own databases, for example. The solutions implemented to, for example, face coastal erosion are mostly sometimes unplanned and mostly they are gray infrastructure. So there is a need for a high-level and dedicated coastal coordination mechanism. Moreover, you have a lot of different donors, and they all implement projects and initiatives in silos. So the direct consequences of all of this is that the coherence of coastal management is constrained, and there is a risk of maladaptation. And so there is the relevance to investigate integrated coastal zone management strategy and reach-to-reef approaches. The second finding is on a nature-based solution for coastal resilience and planning. So here you have a brief overview of the advantages, but also limits of both gray infrastructures and NBS. For example, gray infrastructure can provide sometimes strong short-term protection, but there is a weak long-term sustainability and a high maladaptation risk, whereas nature-based solution can offer a short-term protection while being also more sustainable in the long term, and it can help to avoid the maladaptation risk. But most importantly, it's important to look at integrated approaches, balancing context and the needs to make a choice on which type of solutions you want to implement. Third finding is a general one, is that for projects, it's a constraint. When you want to build a project, you have to take into account that there is a climate finance gap looking for donors, where there is a structural underfunding and access barriers in small island developing states. So here you have three main numbers. 0.2% of global climate finance flows to small island developing states, 2 billion received per year versus the 12 billion needed in national adaptation policies and nationally determined contribution, and 44% of adaptation finance are debt instruments, which can enhance the macroeconomic vulnerability of those states that are sometimes with high level of debt and limited budgeted capacity. Moreover, there is no significant correlation between vulnerability for a state and the finance received to implement coastal adaptation projects, which means that the donors, for example, such as the GCF, Global Climate Fund, structurally disadvantages small-scale projects, and some countries, such as the Seychelles, for example, that are kind of not high-level income countries, but kind of, they don't have access to concessional finance because of the indicators the donors look at. So there is a will from the UN to move toward a more integrated approach, and they created a new index, but it's just the first step of a process that has to be implemented. Finding 4 is that beyond consultation, when you talk about coastal adaptation issues and projects, you have to take into account local community through consultation processes, and it is a very prerequisite, for integrated solutions. Even if you work on nature-based solution, you have to take into account all the local knowledge and livelihoods. For example, if you want to plant mangroves, you have to take into account if there are fishermen in the area, because it can have an impact on the social ground, I would say. And this is very important to have at the very beginning of the project design phase to ensure ownership and sustainability. So results, also 6 lessons learned from case to generalization. I try to identify through my experience on a single case study what could be the transferable lessons to capitalize on what could be the approach to develop a project focusing on coastal adaptation in small island developing states. So first, that data monitoring and knowledge sharing is very important. You have to implement it, to consider it as a proper component of a project itself. Governance is key. For example, you can have an institutional diagnosis at the very early stage. Coordination across initiatives and projects. There are always like local ICZM strategy and marine spatial planning, but also DRR and biodiversity project implementing at the same time. And so map existing initiative at the beginning is also very important. When you want to focus on a nature-based solution, you have to take into account that it is a context-specific solution. So you have to look at the community involvement, the local conditions, ecosystem specificities before you decide what you want to implement as a solution to, for example, face coastal erosion. For project design, the donor is also a design constraint because the financing you can have usually shape the problem from day one. And the last one is that coastal adaptation is a matter of interdisciplinary and intersectoral approach. The results on the institutional part, project design. So beyond the deliverables I mentioned, literature review, contextual analysis, stakeholder mapping, and concept note design, it helped to build institutional capital, as it can both reduce the cost and the need for external resources when you have the project development phase that is done in-house. It can also faster the processes, and it can also help to build replicable methodology that can help future project development in other contexts. On a more reflexive analysis, when you work on project design, it's not only technical issues, but it's also highly political, because you have to take into account the views of different stakeholders, donors, beneficiaries, local communities, and all of those interests have to be navigated simultaneously. It's essential to mitigate maladaptation risks at the very early stage. And empirical experience, besides desk-based research, can build valuable knowledge that can be used for other projects. So the limitations of the project is that I mostly worked on one case study, so transferability to other contexts is argued and not demonstrated for all seeds. I had constrained field mission time, which limited depth on community and civil society perspectives. I also have some confidentiality requirements, so that limits transparency on some contextual details. And project timelines and cycles exceed this academic calendar, so I will be able to have more view on the next steps for this project in the following months. And also the partial time allocation I dedicated to this project was besides other existing portfolio tasks I had to conduct. So to conclude, the impact, so operationally and analytically, it's all deliverable I mentioned. Institutionally also, it's the institutional capital regarding in-house expertise building, methodological framework for project design, and individually it helped to build technical expertise and professional legitimacy kind of on coastal adaptation issues in seeds. Thank you. I don't know where to look at it.
You can, just stay here. So like this, we do see
Perfect. 3 screens.
Ourselves, yes. Okay, so thank you, Hugo. We will, of course, open the floor to question. And I think Jean-Vincent, you didn't start yet, so it's your turn.
Have you personally overseen and developed a project with your institution?
Yes, it's not, I would say, as part of this calendar, but in previous assignments, I worked on different stages and phases of project from design to implementation, I would say. But I would say also that one of the limits in what I did is not to have been working with like local NGOs really on the field, mostly like general initiatives and projects at higher level, I would say.
And you can develop an example of project?
Yeah, so basically you can have funded from a donor. My company is taking the money to implement projects, and then it can be funding to NGOs to implement concrete activities, grants to university, to subsidize students to conduct studies in their field in the targeted countries. It can be also support to NGOs to implement nature-based solutions directly on the field, mobilize experts to conduct some technical studies. It can be all of that aspects. And so generally in projects, you have all of these aspects in the different components.
So you help to build a network
exactly
for projects?
You get the needs of the targeted beneficiaries, I would say, and what are the issues you want to tackle. And then you build all the architecture to reach the targets. And so we have the capacity to identify through the needs what will be the good design to do so.
And so based of your discover or lesson,
Yes.
Can you give an example of a project that could have been improved with this finding?
Yes. I think sometimes when you look at nature-based solutions, it's very general wording, and it's difficult to understand what is really happening on the field, what are all the scientific studies behind them, and so you have to take the time to really look at it. And sometimes it's hard to find this time before supporting, for example, an NGO. So I think it's very important to take it as part of the design of projects, and sometimes it was not the case.
So at the beginning,
yeah, at the very beginning,
enough time to
exactly.
Prepare scientific.
I think it's the main aspect. Yeah.
Okay, before
implementation,
the project, and then the field experiment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anna? Yeah.
Thank you, Hugo, for your presentation. In your opinion, in your opinion, what can be done to strengthen governance of climate change adaptation in small island developing states?
I think what could be interesting is to have a high-level awareness from, I don't know, like the highest entity. And so they can have the mandate to create, for example, coordination mechanism between all the institutions, environmental ministries, but also land use planning, because in SEEDS, when you talk about coastal adaptation, the entire space is concerned, from the reach to the reef, you know. So to have a mechanism that can coordinate all the interventions of all the sectors, and so you can strengthen coordination and more coherent policy regarding coastal adaptation, I would say. But you need a high-level mandate to do so.
Yeah. And you talked about, in your findings, about climate finance gap.
Yes.
So what can be done in these small island developing states to cover this climate finance gap? Like more local stakeholders, or like how can it be covered?
Maybe at broader scale, you have to look more on what are the vulnerabilities, and that key economic indicators are not all relevant to address vulnerabilities. So that's a first point. Then you can also discuss on how you can improve access of some states or territories to big climate multilateral funds, which is kind of difficult right now. And also you can look at what is happening on the field of loss and damage financing, which is beyond adaptation, but some new funds are created to address also those issues. And to do so, I think seeds have to think about what they will lose in terms both of economic assets, but also non-economic assets such as cultural heritage. And all that.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I give the floor now to Martin.
Yes, thank you, Hugo, for the presentation. Can we go back on the slide? You were really fast on the slide, and I couldn't get everything, what was written. I would like to go back on like maybe 3 slides before empirical knowledge. Yeah, the one before, just like
this one?
No, blue one. It's a blue one. No, close to the end. Yeah, local perception. Reflexive. Can you tell me more about this? The last one, empirical experience.
Yes. I think what I wanted to mention is that the international cooperation context is mostly driven by keywords and key topics, and sometimes the language of project development is very general. But before translating those very general language, you have to look at what is really happening on the field and to get insights from really local challenges. If you don't do that, you will stay very general and it will not have an impact, I would say. And when you look at like global like publication from international actors, sometimes it's difficult to get what is beyond those general words and language, like for example nature-based solutions or
so that's my point. What's the empirical and what's the local perception? Did you get like any interviews to know about the local, what they need, like what those people are living and what they face, what the solution they would because you talk a lot about money, stakeholders, politics, but you don't talk about people, and I want to know more about people and what is your study based on local knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So I think you can both look at university work, where you have, for example, PhD student working in a specific country on, for example, social inclusion issues and vulnerabilities related to coastal erosion. So if you can interview those people, it can give you a lot of valuable insights as they work, for example, 3 years on a specific community in a specific area. So that's a point. But also, I think that it's mostly also at the implementation phase to ensure that there are consultation at the local level to have some kind of validation of what you want to do at the very at every stages, I would say. To get insights from people on what you want to do, I would say.
Do you have example, like concrete example on the field, like an island, local communities, and something they propose? It's a bit hard for me. It's a bit hard for me to in all this in what you say, like to have like a concrete thing, like give me a solution based on local knowledge if you have, like
for example, if you want
how does it work?
For example, if you want to, I don't know, if you want to plant mangroves, you can have, if you don't ask, for example, the local fishermen, you can have really bad reactions after planting mangrove because it change, for example, sediment in the area. So they will have to go away to fish. So that's the kind of local reality you have to take into account before finding a solution, like before deciding which solution you want to implement.
Okay, and one last question about because in what you're saying, you fight against the cause, but are they asking to reduce CO2 emissions, for example, like the base of their problem? Is there any topic about this?
About, sorry, the mitigation?
But for example, you said that you work about exposition to climate change, right? Yeah. On those seeds. So climate change is due to CO2 mainly. Is there any political I don't know, like, are they fighting and telling the world to stop emitting CO2 or reduce, or not at all?
I think it depends. What they are saying is that they are not responsible, but they are impacted by climate change. And so they are asking answers from those who are emitting those emissions to give them solutions to adapt to a problem they didn't start it. So that's the point. And it also depends of the countries. For example, you have different impacts, such as Tuvalu, that may lose his entire territory. Is not focusing. He is focusing on. It's focusing on big question of what should I do with the people, and other countries are less impacted while there are still seeds. So I think it depends of the countries also.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I'm going back to you. Do you have any last questions? Do you want? Yeah, of course.
No, I find the topic also like a question that's.
Sorry.
Oh, my bad. One question that also popped up for me a little bit in a similar direction, because you talked about a little bit of ownership.
Yes.
And I think first of all, really good job, and I think this is something really interesting. Also, I also work in like the German version of what you're doing, right? So this is like really interesting to me as well. I did I wrote a research paper a while ago with another professor, and it was about the Solomon Islands and basically looking at reactions and about how they manage their resources. And a lot of the times there was issues of trust.
Yes.
That's like the biggest thing in ownership. And is there something that you've considered in the project design phase that could help, besides just saying like, okay, we need to take local perception into the case? Is there something that you were able to, I know this is really difficult, and this is literally the reason I'm asking, is because I think it's something I'm really interested in. So maybe you have something in this direction already. But was there something that you noticed perhaps that would help build trust, that could repair past mistakes that other NGOs or other development groups have done? Was there anything in that direction that you came across in your research?
Regarding trust, I would say it's kind of difficult.
Yeah,
kind of difficult at the project design phase, as you have to find a way to conciliate donors' expectations, stakeholders like others. But maybe when you will focus on finding the appropriate partners you will work with, you can look at what, like, for example, NGOs looking at, for example, if you launch a call for proposal, you can ask like, okay, I want to work with those type of NGOs that can present me a way they will ensure local ownership. And so based on that, your analysis will be more or less precise. But yeah, I think it's difficult to answer that question.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have time.
So yeah, no, super interesting also because I also work in climate finance related topics and have a specific interest in that. But working on this aspect from a agriculture and fisheries perspective, especially, one of the issues we have in defining adaptation projects for this type of solutions is the indicators factor. And it is really difficult to have standardized indicators about good adaptation practices because there is no agreement also within the international community on on what can be a measurable and concrete indicator for adaptation. For mitigation, we have a lot of these elements, but not for adaptation. So I was wondering if applied to coastal adaptation in the case of SITS, it is a struggle that you had also, or if in this case, I don't know, we have the elements to say this is a good indicator. What is if you have some examples of common indicators, or if in general it's an issue at the moment?
I would say it's an issue, and it's a very good question, because with climate change mitigation, it's easier to focus on metrics and things that are very quantitative sometimes, whereas in coastal adaptation, you have to deal with qualitative indicators that are difficult to rationalize in classic project documents. So yeah, same issues, I would say, but I don't have in mind any example like right now. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks, Hugo. Well done.
Thank you.
We will continue with the final presentation.
So we're going to welcome Alban. So time just to change the setup, so like this in the room we do see you correctly. Alban. Hi, Alban.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yes. 1 second, Alban, and we will be ready. It's just for us also on the room to see well your different your slides. So like this, we're all good. Okay, so we should be good. Slides are up. So Alban, as you know, like for everyone, you have 15 minutes of presentation, and then we will open the floor to question. Best of luck.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Today I will present my internship project carried out at Biotop. During this 6-month internship, I have contributed to 2 international projects focused on mangrove restoration and management in the Caribbean. One project takes place in the Dominican Republic, while the second one, called REMAR, involves several islands in the Eastern Caribbean. So first, before presenting the projects themselves, I'd like to briefly introduce the company. So Biotop is a French environmental consulting firm. It provides scientific and technical expertise to governments, NGOs, international organizations, and private companies working on biodiversity conservation, ecosystem restoration, and environmental management. So its activities ranges from ecological assessment and impact studies to restoration planning, protected area management, and environmental monitoring. I will mainly talk about the REMAR project because it takes the most of my time here at Biotop. So it's important to understand why mangroves deserve so much attention. Mangroves are among the most valuable coastal ecosystems in the world. First, they are among the most valuable coastal ecosystems, and they protect coastlines against erosion, storms, hurricane by reducing the wave energy. They are also biodiversity hotspots, providing nursery habitats for many species of fish, crustaceans, and birds. In addition, mangroves are extremely efficient carbon sinks. They can store up to 5 times more carbon than terrestrial forests, making them an important natural solution to climate change. But despite these benefits, mangroves continue to disappear because of coastal urbanization, tourism development, pollution, and climate change. So today, 20 to 35% of their global areas has already been lost. So that highlights the urgent need for restoration and better management of these mangroves. Both projects follow very similar objectives. The first objective is to produce comprehensive environmental and social diagnostics to understand the ecological condition of each mangrove ecosystem. The projects also aim to evaluate the governance by identifying the different stakeholders involved in the mangrove management and to analyze their roles and their interactions. Another objective is to organize capacity building workshops, helping local managers and the communities to develop the skills they need to for this long-term conservation. And finally, based on all the collected information, we will have to prepare intervention plans to guide future restoration actions. So as an intern, my role is to contribute to these diagnostics, to support the stakeholders' engagement activities, and to participate in the preparation of these intervention plans. So these projects involve many different stakeholders. The main financial partner is the Agence Française de Développement, which finances both projects. In the Dominican Republic project, the institutional partner is the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources through the National 30x30 Conservation Initiative. And for the REMAR project, the institutional client is the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, or OECS, which coordinates the project across the several islands. Finally, the local park managers and the local authorities are some essential stakeholders because they will ultimately implement and maintain the proposed restoration measures. So Biotop acts as the environmental consultant, bringing expertise throughout the project. So we gather experts from Biotop, but as well from other consulting firms, such as Unite Caribbean, which are specialized in socioeconomic concerns, Nature and Development with Mélanie Arteman, who specialized in mangroves, and Ginger Sofreco for hydrological and topographic surveys and analysis. So every project starts with the inception phase, where the methodology and work plan are defined. Then the environmental, social, and governance diagnostics are conducted. These assessments are followed by the stakeholders' engagement activities and consultations. And based on these results, the restoration strategies and intervention plans are developed. And finally, validation workshops will be organized with the local stakeholders before producing the final reports and the monitoring plans. So this structured workflow ensures that the restoration recommendations are scientifically sound and remain adapted to the local realities of each site. So my missions in those projects, so I was involved in all stages of the REMAR projects. One of my responsibilities was supporting the preparation of field missions. So this included contacting the local stakeholders, scheduling the meetings, organizing the experts' travel and accommodation, and making sure that everyone had the necessary logistical and technical information before leaving for the field. Another significant task was carrying the desk reviews. So I searched for the scientific articles and technical reports to better understand each study site before field investigations. This information helped identify existing knowledge, identify data gaps and priorities for the fieldwork, assessment and analysis. I also participated in the preparation of the diagnostic plans by compiling the existing ecological information. So this work contributed to defining what data needed to be collected on the field and which methods would be the most appropriate. After the field mission, which is the current step, I am helping gather and organize the information collected by the experts. And I contribute to writing sections of the diagnostic reports and synthesis these large amounts of information into clear technical documents. So the REMAR project covers several islands of the Eastern Caribbean, as you can see here. So although these islands are geographically close, each site present different ecological characteristics, restoration challenges, and governance contexts. So one recurring issue is the alteration of hydrological connectivity. In many mangroves, roads, embankments, or urban infrastructures interrupt the natural circulation of freshwater and seawater, so this modifies the salinity, sediment transport, and water exchange. So restoring this hydrological connection is one of the major restoration priority. Another important challenge is the rapid coastal development. Tourism infrastructure, roads, marinas, and residential expansion have fragmented the ecosystems and reduced their surface. So in several locations, mangroves are now surrounded by urban environments. Also, climate change plays a major role. Hurricane Beryl caused significant damage on several islands, mostly the southern ones, destroying the vegetation and modifying the coastal landscapes. So these events demonstrate why the restoration projects must improve the ecosystem resilience rather than simply replant mangroves. However, ecological restoration alone is not sufficient. Every island has its own governance system, legislation, and local stakeholders. All have different expectations regarding the mangrove management. So understanding these social dynamics is just as important as understanding the ecological conditions. This is why the REMAR project combines ecological diagnostics, hydrological assessments, and socioeconomic studies and stakeholder consultations before proposing restoration actions adapted to each individual sites on those islands, rather than applying a single solution to every site. So to illustrate my contribution to the REMAR project, I will focus on the site of Ashton Lagoon as an example. During my internship, I worked on the spatial analysis of the site using satellite imagery and GIS. So one of the analyses I carried out was the comparison of the normalized difference vegetation index, or NDVI, before and after Hurricane Beryl. The NDVI is an indicator of vegetation health and density. So by comparing images acquired before and after the hurricane, I was able to identify the areas where the vegetation cover had decreased significantly. The maps show that the most affected zones were located along the exposed coastal sections and around the marina infrastructure. That's a construction that has been abandoned before the completion and on which mangrove had taken over. So the reduction in the NDVI value suggests a loss of vegetation vigor, likely caused by the strong winds and physical damage to the mangrove. On the other hand, we can notice that the interior of the mangrove suffered a less important decrease in NDVI value and were much more resilient. So the NDVI comparison therefore provides a first quantitative assessment of the hurricane impact and helps identify priority zones for field verification. However, NDVI alone cannot explain why these changes occurred, so it only highlights where vegetation health has changed. So to better understand these drivers, these dynamics, I combine this analysis with a detailed land use mapping of the site. So this map here distinguishes mangroves with their health state, water bodies, urbanized areas, marina infrastructures, and others. So this work complements the NDVI we saw before because it allows us to interpret the observed vegetation changes with their spatial context. So a critical point is that a decrease in NDVI does not automatically mean complete mangrove destruction. In some areas, the reduction may correspond to a temporary defoliation caused by the hurricane, while in other areas, it may reflect long-term degradation linked by the human activities, for example. So by comparing the land use map with the NDVI, we can see that the sectors located near the coast and around the marina, as we said before, it experienced the greatest decrease in NDVI after Beryl, and therefore a greater loss of mangrove. Indeed, mangroves located along the coast are naturally more exposed to hurricane impacts. So, and also the marina, the abandoned marina, had altered the tidal connectivity and restricted the water exchange in and out of the lagoon. So it can increase physiological stress on the mangrove and reduce its resilience. On the contrary, the interior mangrove maintained a relatively high NDVI value despite the hurricane. So that indicates a better level of resilience of the ecosystems thanks to the surrounding mangrove, which may have protected it and reduced the effects of the hurricane. I want to highlight here that there are methodological differences between the land use and the HVI. The LULC classification was produced from a satellite image acquired shortly after the hurricane burial, which may introduce some uncertainty when distinguishing between health states of mangroves. On the other hand, the NDVI is a continuous spectral index that is also influenced by the seasonal variation and environmental condition. Also, the LULC map was realized on observation of a satellite image, and the human eye can certainly make mistakes. So I relied strongly on my tutor who has been on site, and that could help me distinguish between different classifications and mangrove health states. So this highlights that the importance of combining remote sensing indicators with land use mapping and field observation, and the integration of multiple spatial data sets therefore provides a more robust basis for the restoration planning. So regarding the overall progress of the REMARRE project, several important steps have already been completed. The inception phase, the desk reviews, and the field missions were completed. My cartographic work provided spatial analysis, which helped support the interpretation of field missions. And the next steps will consist of finalizing the environmental and socioeconomic diagnostic reports, and to complete the governance assessments and identifying the most appropriate restoration measures for each site. So Biotop will then organize stakeholder consultations and workshops to present the findings, discuss restoration priorities, and validate the proposed intervention strategies with the local actors. Finally, detailed intervention plans and long-term monitoring plans will be produced. This internship represents a major step in my professional development. Technically, I am strengthening my knowledge of ecosystem diagnostic, GIS, environmental data analysis, and restoration planning. Professionally, I'm gaining experience in environmental consulting, stakeholder engagement, and the coordination of international conservation projects. And one particularly valuable aspect of this internship is the multilingual environment, because I work daily in French, English, and Spanish, and sometimes even in Portuguese. So to conclude, these projects illustrate how ecological science, stakeholder engagement, and international cooperation can work together to protect vulnerable coastal ecosystems. This internship offers me the opportunity to contribute to meaningful conservation projects while developing the technical and professional as well as interpersonal skills required for my future career. So thank you so much for your attention, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Alban. I think now you can hear me. Yes, sorry. So thank you for your presentation. So I will open the floor to questions, and I think this time Martin can start.
Okay. Thank you, Alban. Can we go back on the on your presentation, please? On
Yep.
the draw or the GIS?
The mapping, yeah.
Yeah, the mapping in colors. The
NCPI
next
or
one.
use-
The next one. Yeah, this one. What is the blue part? It's written ocean, but I guess
It's basically the white line is delimits our site. So the blue part is the part of the site where ocean stands, which is basically the interior of the abandoned marina.
okay.
Because I
And what is
color
the difference?
the site.
And what is the difference between the intertidal zone? So intertidal zone is really like on the coast. So there is no intertidal zone in this area where it's written ocean and mangrove. Nothing is going out of water.
Well, the water is coming in and out of the whole site, but I only noted the intertidal zone here
Okay.
because here along the coast it's mostly mangrove, and we cannot find mangrove on the intertidal zone that I noted here. So it was more important for me to note the mangrove zones than the areas where the water was coming in and out of the sites, if you know what I mean.
Okay. And then another question about the cyclone, because you did the mapping just on the sea parts, right? Or intertidal and sea, and you didn't go on land on the impact of the cyclone? When you said like on the map before, maybe the map before, like you said,
Yeah.
yeah, you were looking at what disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say what can you say about the land parts, you know, and the impact of the cyclone? What happened?
I mean, everything that is green is land, apart from the marina that you can see here. So we are working on the land part because that is where the mangrove stands. And what can I say about the hurricane? We can
About
say
the village, let's say the village. So like not the land, but the parts where the
okay.
inland, or I don't know how to call it. You know.
The hurricane damages a lot of buildings, so there's a lot of debris in the mangrove that is a major priority for us in the plans that we are building here.
Okay, so there is no direct impact of what happened on land after on the mangrove, like rivers or.
There's no river on this site specifically because we're working. So that's the client. So here the OECS that decides which area we are working on. And on this site there is no river, but on other sites where I can think of where there are rivers, it didn't really change the topographic functioning of the rivers, but that's something that they worked on during the field missions, the topographical experts. But I think visually from the NDVI maps, I didn't see any changes on the rivers. Okay. Mostly on the mangrove state of health.
Okay, and how many people in the what is it? Is it a village or a city? Like how many people, and what was the impact on the people? You know, of the cyclone that maybe you.
Well, that's something we're working on because they just came back from the field missions, and that's not Biotop that worked on the socioeconomic and social diagnostics. And I'm waiting for a consultation with the social experts to so they can let me know what they could take from the testimonies from the local communities. We didn't have much information for now, because the field missions just ended.
Okay. That's good for me. Thank you, Alban.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, so I will give the floor now to Diana.
Thank you, Alban, for your presentation. Could you please identify and explain to me the risks that your project had?
The risks were first the hurricane, which happened before but didn't happen during the field missions. Another risk was the fact that the fields could be impenetrable. That's something that the experts faced during the field missions, because some parts of the mangrove, they couldn't go into them to inspect more or take or to analyze or anything like that. Another risk was the fact that some stakeholders or some communities wouldn't be willing to work with us and wouldn't be willing to give us their testimony. For now, I think they have United Caribbean taken the most of local stakeholders' testimonies, but not all of them. I think we encountered an issue only with one I don't know how to say that, a local inhabitants in Anse-Meunier in Martinique. So yeah, that's the most risks that we can think of and that we encountered.
Okay, and why do you think the stakeholders were not willing, or sometimes are not willing to participate?
Because there were some conflicts in the past, because he is sorry, I forgot my word. He's a landowner. So he's a landowner on parts of the site in Anse-Meunier, and there has been conflicts in the past. So now he's not willing anymore for anyone to come onto the site, even if it's for conservation. He's really protective of its land.
Okay, so and going back to slide 10 on the figure that you were talking about with Martin, I have a question regarding the 3 parts of the mangrove. So to have these conservation and restoration strategies for this part, which one will work better to start with to restore?
That's something that we are talking about right now with all the experts. I think we haven't talked about Ashton Lagoon yet, but one aspect that was talked about was dismantling the abandoned marina to restore the connectivity of and reducing the water restriction out and in and out the marina and the lagoon. So that was, I think, the top priority for this site, because it led to a lot of fish mortality inside the lagoon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Jean-Vincent.
Thank you for this presentation. If maybe I missed the information, but you already complete the mapping that we discussed, and then you create, not create, but you have done a wildlife inventory yourself.
Not myself. I completed a desk review, which means that I analyzed all the documentation that we had for each site and every inventories that has been made in the past, so that we could have a basis for the field missions that happened a few weeks before.
Okay,
but that's actual current inventories.
Okay, to compare before after.
To be prepared and to know which species we could be looking for example.
Okay, and so you can maybe compare the wildlife inventory before after.
Yep.
And maybe so the differences. Okay. Do you have examples of other places where this type of project has worked?
I know they worked on mangroves projects in some countries in Africa before my internship, and that was the first mangrove project they worked on in Biotop. I don't remember if it was in Senegal or Guinea. Maybe Guinea, I don't know, but I know they worked in African countries before that.
So you will compare the results between the different locations?
It's not planned that we compare the results to this project, I think, because it's different clients. So no, I don't think so.
Okay, and to finish, what were the most challenging parts?
The most challenging part was a social one. It was managing all the different people from all the different companies, like the experts from United Caribbean, the experts from Ginger Sofreco, the experts from Biotop, and the local stakeholders, and the clients that we are working with. So planning meetings with all of these great people is sometimes really challenging because we're all on different continents and countries and on different timelines. So I think that's the most challenging thing for me, and because that's the first time in my life that I had to encounter this kind of mission.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So now I'm opening the floor, of course. Yes, in the room. You can take this one, yes. Two questions. We still have time.
Thank you very much, Alban. And sorry if I missed the info, but do you know if there were different mangrove species in the specific site? And if so, were there different impacts for each mangrove species regarding, I don't know, the way they function?
There are three main species of mangrove that we encountered on the site. And Mélanie Artemont, which is the mangrove specialist, was talking to me about the species that she encountered on site, because it depends on the location. There's some species of mangrove that are more specific of the interior inland mangroves, and some that are more on the coastal location. So she was talking to me about that. But yeah, we have still to dig into this information to know more about that.
Thank you.
Maybe just one question on the mangroves again, on the line of Hugo, because I was interested by the fact that all the mangroves apparently before the hurricane were kind of colonizing the old marina. So I was wondering if it's something that happen often, if you know about this, if it's something that there's other examples about maybe some kind of artificial reefs that have been created for kind of, allowing mangroves, in this case, it would not be restoration, but kind of, plantation.
That's the first case I've encountered for those kind of thing, because I think it couldn't happen on reefs because it has to be not submerged all the time. So that's a very specific case where it's an environment that can be underwater and out of the water at the same time, depending on the tide. So to be honest, that's the first time I've encountered that case.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I meant, I say the artificial reef, but it was probably the wrong jargon, because it would have been more about infrastructure.
I got it.
I guess the response is the same, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any last question? Any moderate? Some not all clear? Okay, so here again, asking a question but not part of the jury, just by curiosity, because you talk about the next stage of the project. You did present them pretty well, but so as you also mentioned, it's part of your internship. I'm just curious about like in which stage are you still involved, and maybe for what's next for you? Like, will you have a chance also to continue working on this project?
So as I said, I'm gathering information from the experts that just got back from the field missions. So they're telling me all about what they saw and what they think, and what solution that they can think of. And my goal right now is to write the assessment reports, so the ecological one, the socio-economic one, and the hydrological one. So that's a big part of the work for now. I think the project is due at the end of the year, so I will not be there anymore.
Okay. But so it's something that is still interesting for you, like you would like to continue working in this type of field?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, trying to open doors, of course. Okay. So I think, well, I'm welcoming everyone back, of course, on stage, because I see we have Stéphane, Léonore, Martin. I would like to thank you all again. Thanks again, Alban. Well done also for your presentation. Yeah, it was a pleasure to have all of you today. Of course, it's not over. It was only the first session. We will be back together. So tomorrow at 2 p.m. So we will be moving from tropical coast more locally, I will say, so more to the Med, because we're going to talk about conservation and governance in the Med Sea. We will have Lucia, Nila, Laura, and Noemi. So please don't hesitate to come back. But thanks again for being with us, and well done, everyone. So now I will just end.